Hey, welcome to the Scuttlebutt podcast. I'm Rich, and we're coming at you live tonight on a gorgeous evening here in late October. It's gorgeous where I'm at anyway. It was hit 10 degrees today and was sunny, so that was nice. Tonight's guest is Matt Duncan, and Matt, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Rich. Good to be here.
I'm glad to have you here. We've had a 2-week hiatus here on doing podcasts. We went traveling. We headed down south to Texas, and maybe we'll talk about that later. But tell me, whereabouts are you at, Matt? I know that we're 2 hours difference in time.
So I live in what we call Midwestern Ontario. I'm probably roughly an hour east of Lake Huron, and probably 2.5 hours west of Toronto, and about an hour south of Georgian Bay, and about 2.5 hours north of the border at Ontario and the US.
Well, as long as you say you're west of Toronto, things are looking up.
It's a very rural community. My town's about 700 people, growing with visions all the time, but it's mainly predominantly agriculture around here.
Okay, so you actually have very nice weather then. You're that far south, right?
So I live in the snow belt. So when the snow starts to come, we get the squalls off the lake, and we get dumped on, and then it'll melt, and then we get dumped on it again. And when I was younger, it used to be we get wintertime, it might thaw once, and now it thaws numerous times and floods, and it makes for interesting trapping. Anyways, that's for sure.
That lake effect stuff, right?
Yeah.
But you're actually south of some of the northern tier states, then, right?
Oh yeah, I'm south of. When I look at the map, about halfway across Wisconsin is kind of where I'm at latitude.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So your weather's quite different than ours. Me bragging about my plus 10 degree day today was nothing for you, huh?
It was the same temperature here today.
Was it?
Yep.
Well, we got a little bit of snow. I guess we've had 2 snowstorms, but neither one of them mounted the hill of beans. Or an inch and a half of snow, and a couple of days with sunshine, and that's gone. But we're getting late for not having snow that stays for here.
Yeah, so it was the last 2 days previous, it was 18, 19 degrees here. We won't know for a while yet.
That is warm. So tell me, how did you get into trapping? Young fella like you, it could only been a couple of years ago.
Yeah. My grandfather was a trapper.
Yeah.
So I started trapping. I was 8 years old when I caught my first muskrat within walking distance of my mom and dad's house. And it just kind of snowballed from there. That muskrat, and the next year I think I caught 30 muskrats, a mink, and a bunch of coons, and I think I had the most money of any kid in town at that point.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was a real driving factor at that point.
I remember those days too. And it wasn't so much for muskrat here to begin with. It was do you remember the late 70s? No, you weren't trapping then. late 70s, early 80s, we had that big boom. I actually had a lynx that went for $1,300 or something like that. And that was like, holy cow, that was an entire month's worth of employment for a journeyman carpenter, right? And I got that on one lynx. It was remarkable. That has changed so much since then. So you started like everybody does, making yourself a little bit of side money, and you started with muskrat.
Yep, muskrats, and then like I said, I caught that first mink the second year. I think I was 9, and I got $80 for that mink.
Wow.
And I'm thinking to myself, wow, I could just do this the rest of my life at that point, and, and
I have right here. I'll show you. You see what that says there?
Well, mink, yeah.
Yeah, mink. I got for top lot mink for one of fur harvesters. Actually, I think I had 4 or 5 mink in the top lot. you know, and I think I got $10.50 for them for each.
I've sold a lot of $10 and $20 minks since that $80 one. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, well, and it was funny because my muskrats actually went really well, and I haven't got a muskrat right now. I have, and I should be out muskrat trapping, but we've been off to Texas, went on a hunt that I wanted to do, and just because I wanted to get outside of the world and outside of my head, and we went off on a trip, and that's usually my prime muskrat time. And I don't know if it's still open next week, I'll do some, but we're headed for the big line tomorrow, and that's the beginning of trying to clean up all the trees and everything else. You try. Hopefully, we still got a bridge in. It has been a dry year, so I shouldn't have lost a bridge or anything like that. But I'm looking forward to getting out there too. That's it's been one of those years where things just have conspired, and I haven't been to the trap line too much. We got out there. Oh, jeepers. I think I was done probably in early July, getting ready for our guests that are coming here in December to go do the trap line and with us and be on the show. And I just haven't been back. It's one thing after another, you know, kids need this, kids need that, you know, Sandy has an event come up or something. And all of a sudden it's like, we haven't been there since early July, you know?
Well, the feeling my two youngest girls and we went up middle of September to camp and did a bit of cleaning up and some fishing and shot some grouse and, you know, just kind of relaxed. I needed a few days to go and relax and not do a whole lot. It was a busy summer chasing critters. So
that's the thing though, that people don't get. I see people say, you know, I'm done trapping. I'm not going to donate my time. I'm not going to work for $1 an hour. I don't, you know, yes, of course, what you get paid is important, but it's not the overriding factor for me. I mean, it's different if it's your job, like if it's animal damage control, that kind of stuff. But for the health that it creates, you know, in between my ears, especially when I'm out there in the bush, you know, I can do a lot of that. You know, it's funny. You'll put in a 50 or 60 hour week, and then you'll go out to the trap line for 3 days and put in another 50 or 60 hours worth of work out there. But you'll come back from that trip to the trap line and ready to go. You know what I mean? Change is as good as a rest. But I kind of feel bad for some of those people who are just, you know, they're trapping coon or beaver or whatever they're trapping and you know, doing it as a fur trapper, and they're not happy. You know what I mean? I think they're missing out on the whole connection there, but I could be wrong.
I kind of have both of those sentiments, because when I first started my animal damage control business, it just because it's a seasonal thing for us here, it worked out great. I could fur trap in the fall and the winter and do my animal damage control in the summer, and I never had to tell a boss I was quitting come the 1st of October to go fur trapping that way.
Yeah.
And I did that a few times over the years because I thought, you know what? I like fur trap way more than coming working in a welding shop.
I know. And I'll work way harder, you know, fur trapping than I will building houses, you know. So you turned a passion into a business, and you have a animal damage control business.
Next year will be 20 years.
20 years?
20 years.
Holy crap.
Since I registered my first business name 20 years ago.
Good for you.
I wasn't able to do it full time at first, so I worked seasonally. Being as there's lots of agriculture around here, I worked for seed and fertilizer companies, you know, hauling fertilizer and stuff when I wasn't busy and doing repairs. And then as the crops got in, then I was left to go, you know, nuisance trapping, and it worked out really good, actually.
Well, you said that you're in a very rural area, so there's a big demand there then?
So I do drive a lot.
Oh, you drive. Okay.
I do. I have a circle about an hour and a half of the house.
Okay.
And that includes, we have a lot of cottagers up and down the Lake Huron shoreline that come from Toronto and London and the bigger cities. And They're a big bulk of my customers. And then I do some work I've done work in Toronto, London, Stratford, Kitchener, Waterloo, Cambridge, Guelph.
Oh, okay. Isn't
So
it funny? Isn't it funny that the people that want to lecture you about the ethics of trapping have no idea how to deal with a raccoon in their attic?
they're the first person that calls you. And I always turn it into a discussion about wildlife management and trapping anytime I meet a customer. I have a great time doing that. I probably spend too long talking to people, to be honest with you.
So what's your law there? Can you actually move that animal and release it, or do you have to kill it?
So the guidance from our Ministry of Natural Resources is close proximity, which they define as 1 to 2 kilometers.
Okay.
All my customers get told the same thing. If this animal leaves here, it gets euthanized.
Okay.
If you want me to exclude the animal from your property and let it be and let it live here, that's fine. We can do that. We don't have to kill it. But if it leaves here, that's what happens to it.
Okay. And
Some are fine with it, some aren't. I've had people tell me, I don't care how much damage it did to my house, let it go in the backyard.
Really?
I can't believe it myself, but it's what it is.
You kind of hope they pass them genetics along.
Actually, raccoons are very built that way. Once a raccoon lives in a house, all its offspring live in houses too. They're just conditioned that way, and that's why Toronto has a huge raccoon problem, because nobody wants to do anything with those raccoons. All the companies the same thing. They kick them out, they exclude them, they move 2 houses down to the neighbor.
Okay.
Kill nothing, and it just goes on and on and on.
So raccoons are your number one animal?
So raccoons, skunks, and squirrels are my big 3.
Okay.
And then I do quite a bit of nuisance beaver control too for our municipalities. We have our country here is very flat. So we have drainage ditches everywhere. Mm-hmm. Hundreds of kilometers of drainage ditches that drain all the farmland. When a beaver moves into one of them, it's not long till the phone rings and say, get rid of him.
Okay.
None of the tiles will run once the beaver plugs up the open ditch.
I seen that in Justin Deaver in Iowa, and he was talking about how they put drainage tile, weeping tile, basically in fields so that they could. I was just flabbergasted. I'd never heard of such a thing, but he said that they would never be able to grow anything otherwise if they weren't constantly draining those fields, and that where they have those, that they're interconnected like the roots of a tree, and they get progressively larger until they're a large tile. And he said that's just the ultimate place to trap raccoon.
It's funny, I've had calls before. I help out the drainage superintendents, and they'll call and they'll say, we got a tile blowout, and it's a coon that's crawled into that tile, and he's crawled in from the outlet, and he might be halfway across the farm when he dies in the tile.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they use them in the summer as dens, just like a hole in the ground.
Right.
Lots of those tiles, unless we get a heavy rain, they're dry all summer.
Yeah.
They don't run any water, so it's just a den site and a travel point to go from one area to another through those tiles a lot of times.
Really?
Yeah.
So when they have one goes in there, dies, plugs it, I guess, and then they end up having.
And then eventually the water blows out around it, and it'll suck a hole in the field, and then they'll know we got. And
old Farmer Brown's tractor goes down as he drives across.
yeah, and there's lots of farms right around me here that they like Justin said, you wouldn't be able to farm if they weren't tiled. It's all really dark black soil, and this was a real wetland years ago when people first came here and cleared it off.
That's amazing. That's it's one of those amazing things that if you never get outside of your own backyard, you never know anything about it, right?
Yeah, I find it quite interesting. When I started going to the NTA conventions, talking with the guys from the Midwest US, it's very, very similar conditions and farming practices in the Midwest US as we have here in Midwestern Ontario.
Yeah, but I mean, you're just about that far south anyway, so.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go over your big three there and talk about how you handle them. Like with the raccoon, what is your number one go-to set?
So 90% of my raccoon work is coons that have moved into attics in the spring and had little ones. So I do a lot of hands-on work. I'll go in the attic and I'll physically remove the little ones. And then I'll use a trap. I trap normally on the roof to catch the sow coon as she's going in and out. 90% of those entrances are roof soffit intersections. You being a builder know all about when the guys bring the aluminum soffit fascia down to the roof, it sits in a J trim loose, and
Yeah,
all the coons do is they grab a hold of it and they just bend it.
no kidding.
Yeah.
Amazing. So
I do a lot of repair work too, and wildlife proofing, and I fix all of those corners.
Yeah.
On there.
So you'd set a live trap just outside of where she would be going in, or
it would get fastened. It'll get fastened right over the hole.
Oh, okay. I got you.
Positive set. She has no choice. She's either got to go through it or can't go in or out.
Oh, okay. Okay. So that's a pretty straightforward set. You don't have to worry about bait, lure, or nothing, right?
No. And if we do any ground trapping, then we'll use bait and lure. But 90% of the sets are positive sets, just because it's a faster method of solving the problem.
Gotcha. And that is 90% of your coon. You said is this spring when she's got young.
Yep. I'll get a few in the fall that have moved. They'll rip a hole to get in to hibernate or something like that. But most of my coon work is spring work.
Oh, okay. Okay, so then
squirrels this time of year is really busy for squirrels because they're all looking for a place to get into hibernate for the winter, and put a good stock of nuts and stuff in for the winter. And so most of my jobs with that are older homes in some of the bigger cities around me that are still wood soffit and fascia, and some of those houses are 70 to 80 100 years old and gets weak, and the squirrel chews a hole and then he goes.
Yeah.
And again, it's mostly positive setting. Sometimes live traps in the gutters and that where they run up and down and catch them that way.
Hey folks, Rich from Trapping Inc. TV here, and it's no secret that I'm a big fan of coffee. Our friends at Old Smokes smoke roast their coffee beans over wood fires. You have no idea how good coffee can taste until it's smoked coffee. Did you know that studies have shown that just the smell of fresh coffee can boost brain activity? Yeah, it's that good. Sandy and I have teamed up with Old Smokes Coffee to make our own Trapping Inc. coffee blend. Let me introduce you to Wolverine, an ultra dark roast coffee bean smoked over maple wood fires. This is the pure, uncut trapper's fuel that keeps us laughing and trapping all day long. If you'd like to try our special blend, you can find it at www.trappinginc.com/shop. If dark roast isn't your thing, Old Smokes has 5 different coffee roasts from light to extra dark, each roasted over a different wood for a unique flavor. Right now, you can order from their online store and use our promo code RICH, that's RICH, and get 10% off your entire order. Just go to www.oldsmokescoffee.com. That's OLE smokescoffee.com and use the promo code RICH. That is promo code RICH for 10% off your entire order. And now let's get back to today's show.
We had to we never built the cabins out at on our trap line. They came with the trap line when we bought it. And the one they did OSB for both the soffit and for the
faceboard then too.
Fascia, yeah, for the faceboard, the fascia. And I mean just OSB. So of course, and they built themselves so the tin goes by the edge of that fascia by an eighth of an inch, right? And so of course that all soaks up and it falls down and everything falls underneath there, and it's like, and I knew the squirrels were going in. I could see it. So that was one of the things we changed this year, and pressure treated for the soffit and 1x4 and aluminum clad so they can't get through it or anything else, and I put a drip cap in so that everything gets over it. It'll never get wet ever again. But I was inside and we were doing some work inside, and all of a sudden one of the ceiling is paneled with hardboard, and one of the hardboard makes this big pop noise, and I look at it, I grab it, and just like this, and it all comes down, right? I was like, that's really weird. And the the nails had just pulled through, right? And there was no weight on it or anything. I pushed up and, on the fiberglass. I thought it was full of nuts or whatever, right? Pine cones, but it wasn't. There was no weight there or anything. And I was just, so then I'm going around, I'm just pounding up the nails that are heads that are sticking out, and then I'm getting ready to put it back up. All of a sudden, the poly bag's down, and this one this one pine cone drops down into the poly, and it's there. I looked at it and said, he says, "Well, what do you think?" I says, "I'm going to pretend it's the only one up there."
Close it up.
we put it back up, screwed it in place. Oh, people have no idea when they're building stuff, do they?
No, I run into all kinds of interesting stuff.
What do you have there? Red squirrel or that gray fox giant thing?
Now that kind of changes depending on where I'm working. I get up along the lake shore to the north of me, and I get a lot more red squirrels. Whereas around home and most of the big cities, it's black, like eastern grays. So
Yeah.
It could be black or gray, or in the case of Exeter, Ontario, they could be white. There's all kinds of white ones running around there.
Is there?
White ones.
Yeah, there's some of those squirrels now are over in Calgary, in southern Alberta, but they're either gray or black. There's pure black ones. I don't know if that's a mutation or
most of the ones that live in my yard, I have a bunch of oak trees and some black walnut trees. So I have lots of squirrels at home here, and most of the ones here are black. I have very few grays. And originally gray was the eastern gray squirrel was gray. And over time it seems like the genetics have went to more black squirrels than grays.
Isn't that weird, huh?
Yeah, it's very strange.
Yeah. We were in Texas. We were hunting aoudad, and you wouldn't recognize. I did recognize a red oak. I knew I could recognize what a red oak leaf was, and the acorns and that kind of stuff. But then there was a bur oak, and it's got very tiny convoluted leaves and all that, but it has these giant acorns, right? And that's a huge source of food for the aoudad. It was pretty cool. But
the deer here really love the white oaks.
Okay, and what kind of
they taste better than the red? The reds have more of a tannin in them, so they're more of a sour taste in acorn compared to the whites.
Okay, is it
the acorns will be about the same size on the reds and the whites, but just the whites taste better to the wildlife. So the deer in on those when they're dropping.
Oh, that's cool. I'd never seen it before, and I've never seen a walnut on a tree either. I think that would be cool to see as well. I have no haven't had that opportunity, and I found this to be really cool when we were in Texas. And I was looking around, I didn't see anything until I noticed in alongside of his driveway there. I says, "Oh, I recognize that. That's a red oak." And he said, "Yeah, they're all oaks." I said, "What?" But there was bur oak and several other. I'll get them all wrong anyway. I just remember the bur because it has this giant acorn, and it's really rough looking. Like it doesn't look like look at all like the red the acorn on the red oak. It was pretty cool.
Yeah.
But so skunk is the other. So
skunks, I always tell people I've had the nickname Stinky since I was in public school. First skunk I ever caught sprayed me, and everybody thought it was funny, and the name stuck. And I always tell people that's the smell of money to me.
Oh yeah.
Nobody wants to get rid of a skunk, even when they catch it in their own trap. They're quite happy to pay you to come and get it and get rid of it. And I've learned a lot about skunks over the years, and I always tell people every skunk has its own personality. Some you could walk up and grab that cage and you could turn it upside down and shake him and spin him around in circles. And he'd never spray you.
Really?
Get 10 feet from him and he's already spraying you before you get anywhere close. They're very individual animals for sure.
Okay.
So when I get a lot of calls is breeding season. Late February, early March. And
Okay.
is those skunks have been there since fall. They've crawled under an addition on a house that was built on piers or somebody's trailer or porch or something like that doesn't have a concrete foundation. And that den full of skunks has been there since fall. Well, all of a sudden, when the males get roaming and breeding season starts, well, the fights start over the females. Well, then the spray starts. And you can imagine what it smells like in somebody's house when 4 or 5 skunks spray underneath it fighting with each other. Breeding season.
I never knew that.
Yeah.
I never knew it'd
Yeah.
be like throwing 4 live grenades in a box and shaking it up, I guess, huh?
It smells and you know the way skunk is, it lingers and lingers forever, like once it's in something. So it's a horrible thing once it gets in a house.
I got a good story to tell you about that. I was trapping skunk for a buddy here in southern Alberta, in south central Alberta, in September this year, and we have no season on skunk here, so that means that you can trap them whenever. They you don't even have to be a trapper to trap them. Anyway, I was there, and my granddaughter came over from Saskatchewan to visit and help me trap skunks, and I was then showing her how to extract everything, right? And when you're extracting, you always put your thumb over the vent, because otherwise you might get squirted. Well, I'm showing her on the second one, and it's a female. She's a very tiny female, a very, very little inner, but I was talking to my granddaughter, and my thumb slipped off, and as I poked it, well, a little and literally, like, you couldn't see where it hit on my shirt. You couldn't see. It was that tiny of a just a droplet, right? We washed that shirt 3 times, and then we washed it when I got home, and this is like back in September, and I took it by accident. It got thrown in the suitcase with me. We took it to Texas, and when I pulled it out to put it on, it still smelled.
It smelled, yeah. The 2 biggest things I find are my wallet and my belt. It's something about leather that it really stays in leather. And I don't know why it is, but those 2 things, it just lingers in them. Every time I pull my wallet out after I get a bit on me, it's like, oh, I can still smell that. I wonder if everybody around me can.
Literally, it's the smell of money then.
Yep. Yeah. Between what people pay me to get rid of them and the essence.
Mm-hmm.
And I collect a bit of skunk fat. I've had a bit of a skunk fat market.
Really? What do you do with that?
I put my pelts up to in the fall and send them. So, yeah.
What do you do with the skunk fat?
So I let it sun render.
Uh-huh.
And it actually makes a great lure base. It'll hold ingredients really good, and it has 0 odor. It's different than coon fat. And the people that bought it from me, actually, some older fellas that had horses, and they were going to use it as horse liniment. They were going to mix something in it and use it for horse liniment.
Oh, cool. I like when I make my martin lure, I mean, I use Vaseline, but I'm not really happy with that because Vaseline tends to skin over and encapsulate. Yep. So I've been trying to find something different. Does skunk fat stay liquid in the cold, or does it get hard again?
It'll gel up and get a little hard, but I don't think it skins over. You'd be a better test than I am, just because you have a lot colder weather. I don't get that cold weather to try to see if it would, like -30, right? Whether it would do that. We only see very short periods of that here in the south.
What about -20? Do you see that?
Yeah, we see -20 quite often here.
Okay. And is it still liquid in the jar at -20?
It's stiff. It's like Crisco at that point.
Okay.
Like a lard at that point.
Okay. Huh. That might be interesting. I'm going to try. Somebody sent me a recommendation for, it's a food a food grade lubricant. It's a grease, and they said that they used it, but it's food grade, so it doesn't have a bad odor or anything like that. You know, like, I mean, you can literally eat it and not make you sick. So I'm going to try that on with some of my lure this year, just to try and get away from the problem with petroleum jelly, right? I had heard that skunk fat made good soap. Do you know anything about that?
Even I could believe it probably would. I've never tried it, but I could believe the fat comes out nice and clear once it's rendered, and there's no smell to it. It's amazing. You'd think an animal that smelled like that would have some kind of odor, but it doesn't.
Well, explain to everybody here when you talk about you sun render it. Well, explain the process. And I mean, the fat itself, does it have any odor?
Not really. No, it just like I would, like any fat, right? Fat has distinct odor to itself. So when I sun render, all I do is I put it in a big jar, put the lid on loose, and I set it out in the hot sun. And what it'll do is what comes off the top of it'll be a clear oil, and then I pour that off, and that's what I keep then.
Okay, and so do you get, like, what percentage of oil do you get out of,
Probably, like, say, we use a mason, like a quart mason jar, for instance. You'll probably get a third oil to 2/3 skunk fat.
Really?
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
It's a fairly high producer. It's surprising how much will come off of it.
So you fill the jar right up then?
Yeah, almost to the top. Just leave a little bit of headspace. You need a bit of room for it to expand. You don't want to fill it right to the top and have it explode on you.
Okay. And how long does it take to sun render down?
I leave it out all summer.
Right.
Same as I do beaver tail oil too in the summer, and I put a 5-gallon bucket out and just leave it all summer. And
what do you use the beaver tail oil for?
I use it as a canine lure.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Just it's the base for it?
It's the base, or you can use it straight too. It's a real curiosity for canines, just straight too. It's one of those things you got to be careful how much you use, because they'll want to roll in it.
Oh, really?
Where they'll put their shoulder down and try and rub on it like a dog, with a piece of stinky stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. For my dogs, it's usually a coyote turd or bear turd. And you just get so when you're walking them, you watch them, and like you say, that shoulder dips and you start yelling.
Yeah. Oh, you're not getting back in the truck with me.
Yeah, well, no, then they get a wash in the front yard under the hose, and they hate that. So, but they never learn. If it's stinky, man, I gotta give that a try.
Yeah.
So you do also. You're a fur trapper then, and that means you have a trap line. I think you were saying like 8 hours north of you.
Yeah, so I'm about 8.5 to 9 hours north. So Kirkland Lake would be the closest big town to where I'm at. Kirkland Lake, Timmins. I don't know if any of the viewers would know that area, but that's where I'm at. It's not a huge line. It's 100 square kilometers. Not as big as some of your guys' Western lines for sure. One big lake and river system splits my line in two. Okay. So that kind of makes it. I love having that big lake, but it makes things a little difficult because you got to drive around. Other than when the river freezes, but it's one of those rivers that there's so much current in it, you're never real trusting of driving on the ice on it. And it's 10, 15 feet deep, so you wouldn't want to drop a skidoo through.
Oh, I know.
So I do most of my trapping up there actually before the snow gets too deep. That I can't. Quite a ways from camp and get in with the skidoo and breaking trail and stuff like that. And with the price of fur the last couple of years, it hasn't made a lot of sense for me to really spend a lot of time in the winter up there.
So what do you trap up there?
So I have I trap a marten quota of 10, lynx quota of 4, and I have to trap 75% of my beaver quota is 45.
Okay.
So in Ontario, we have minimum and maximum beaver quota.
Okay. Okay.
So the law says we have to take 75% of our quota each year.
That must be tough though to balance when, you know, the price of beaver falls off the face of the earth.
I always say it costs me money to trap my beavers up there, but it's the price of being able to go to the north and have a place where you know there's nobody hassling me and it's quiet.
No, and I totally understand that. I mean, I'm looking forward to where I'm headed to tomorrow afternoon as well. But I don't have to trap beaver. Like we don't have a quota as far as that goes. And some years it doesn't make sense to trap beaver, you know, especially where it's been dry like this year. Well, the beaver numbers will be down. And it's so funny because then if we have a wet year next year, it's almost like there were dehydrated beavers everywhere just waiting for water. And when you add water and boom, there's beavers again, right? But to have to trap them, as you know, how does the government equate that? Like
originally the reason behind it is they wanted all the trap lines. It was created with the trap line system to manage the trap lines.
Hey folks, Rich here with some exciting news from trappinginc.com. We were listening when you said you wanted more clothing, and we heard you loud and clear. We've expanded our clothing line, more colors, men's, ladies, and children's sizes, more variety. Living off grid gives more time for the creative juices to flow. New humorous observations are added weekly, as well as our classic Trapping Inc. logo. We have joined forces with TeePublic. You can find our TeePublic storefront from the store page on trappinginc.com. Just go to www.trappinginc.com/shop and just scroll down to find the link for our Trapping Inc. storefront. Or you can go to tpublic.com and enter Trapping Inc. TV in the search bar at the top. Check it out. Big sales every month and you can save up to 35%. Don't miss out. Get your favorite gear today. And now let's get back to today's show.
The beavers cause enough damage, you know, to the infrastructure with the logging roads and stuff up there. They didn't want guys just going and trapping the high dollar marten and leaving the beaver, right? So it was a management decision when that was instituted years ago. And you know, when beavers were $75 or $80 for your good winter beaver, you know, quotas made sense.
Yeah.
They don't make as much sense anymore.
No.
Our fur techs are pretty good though. If we do see we're allowed to adjust our quotas from year to year. If we see that we have no beavers, you know, say one year, and we take and draw a map up through our fur tech with our live colonies, they do 1.5 beaver per colony is how they figure quotas. So if you go and say to them, here's my map of live colonies, and this is, I'm down to, you know, 20 beaver from 40, they'll adjust it for you that year.
Wow. That's pretty technical. I couldn't even begin to tell you where all the lakes are on my trap line, let alone.
I've had my line for 8 years and I'm still finding, I haven't seen it all yet. I'm still finding spots that I haven't been to. Right. So.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And it ends up being a lot of work. You guys, I mean, you would probably travel a lot on either logging roads or alongside the river, that kind of thing, right?
Yeah. So most I in the fall, I run the river with my boat, the river and the lake. The whole length of it with my 12-foot aluminum and motor. So I can do a lot of my beaver trapping right out of a boat, which saves carrying anything too far. And then I have quite a number of logging roads. My trap line's been logged off pretty heavy.
Oh, okay.
A lot of regrowth. And that's definitely not good for your marten populations. I have way more fisher now than I do marten.
It is so weird. Like, I mean, one time you think that, and you know, because none of us ever like to see those big old forests logged and that, but one time you think that, and then the next time a buddy of mine has a trap line and it was logged for aspen and it never had a lot of marten in that. Now with you know, we're 10, 12 years after being logged for aspen and it's crawling with marten. It makes no sense whatsoever, you know.
It's interesting.
He's you know, like there's you know those skinny aspen, you know, 1 dozen to to 20 feet tall kind of thing. And it is just crawling with marten. And I said, was there marten here before? He says, I don't really know. I never really trapped them here,
Huh.
He has two lines and he had one's, in the classic big timber and all that. And that's always been his marten line. He says, I was traveling through here, and he says, I started seeing marten signs. So I started putting boxes out and it was crazy. It was crazy the amount of marten were there. And so I don't know what caused that. I think probably the biggest problem that we have as trappers is that, or outdoors people, is you key in on too many variables and you have far too short of window that you're looking at. You're looking at such a little amount of time, even the amount of time you and I are on the face of the earth and the amount of time that we've been trapping,
Yep.
Isn't a big enough sample to make a hill of beans when it comes to, postulating a theory or whatever. But we're always there thinking about it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
For me,
One thing I have seen in a short period of time here is in the south, I could catch 4 times as many beaver here in the south as I could on my line in the north.
really,
They're just infested with beavers. Nothing like I have ever seen. In 40 years of trapping or 35 years of trapping, I've never seen so many beavers here in the south.
and why is that?
I think mostly it's fur market related. No, there's no other trappers around me trapping beaver unless
Okay.
they're paid to do it. They just stay. So what we have, I kind of live in a unique area. There's 4 major river systems within 20 minutes of my house that are the headwater. I live in the headwaters of 4 major river systems that drain most of southwestern Ontario. So the beavers all live in those rivers and then they migrate up all our municipal, we call them municipal drains, these ditches. And they migrate up all these and some of them as fast as I trap them, 6 months later, all the beavers back in them again.
Yeah, I can believe that. I mean, I do the same for oil companies. Most of my beaver work is for the oil companies out on my trap line. And I tell them, like, I can kill every beaver, but it ain't gonna be long. Good habitat isn't empty for long, and it's true. It's very true. I mean, that's just the way nature is. That's the funny part. I have a friend who's in Vancouver, and I won't mention his name or anything because he doesn't want anybody to know that the trappers actually operate there. But they have those situations where they're catching these beaver, and of course the anti-fur and all that want those beaver to be released somewhere else. But like he said, there is no place else to release. That everywhere every bit of good habitat already has beaver in it. And so you're going to release them and they're going to fight it out. One of them's going to die anyway. There's still going to be a beaver die. And people just don't understand that. They just think that there's just all this area out there. We can throw another beaver here, another beaver there. Not a big deal, If it was good habitat, there would be a beaver there right now.
Yep,
you know what I mean?
Exactly. I deal with that I trap beavers in cities in stormwater management ponds. There'll be 300 houses looking at that stormwater management pond, within your 100 yards of where you're working. I do it all in the dark and nobody even knows I'm there.
Cool. Tell me about this. Tell me what's your go-to in those situations?
So I've gone to strictly cage traps now in those situations, just because I don't ever want the liability of the wrong person sticking their hand in a 330 or somebody's dog or, because like I say, like there's people everywhere in these situations. I've learned that people never sleep. There's always somebody awake somewhere. So it's like you're some kind of, I don't know what to describe it, sneaking around in the dark, trying to remove these beaver without causing a media sensation, right?
Right.
So I use mostly cage traps. I started out building my own cage traps before the Comstocks become available. And I've never ever bought a Comstock yet because I'm quite happy with the way mine work. They just work like a big colony muskrat trap.
Oh, okay.
The original, the doors are up when I set it. And they have a bar in there that holds both doors up. And then the first beaver in hits the bar like a conibear trigger almost. And then both of those doors will shut. But it will repeat and allow a second beaver in if another one comes along and wants to shove the doors. But I found they avoided them more with the doors down.
Okay.
why I went to the style with having a trigger system on the doors to catch the first beaver with the doors up.
Gotcha. So
And they're-
are these in then they're underwater, are they?
Yep.
Okay.
I run them underwater. I can run them and catch beavers live in them too. And if I had to go in and do work, I've done it before where I've caught the beavers live. I put them on a cart and I wheel them out, and people see you doing it and they say, well, what are you doing with those? Well, I'm taking them somewhere else. I don't, sometimes I figured that what the less they know, the better.
Yeah.
It just, all my clients tell me, I don't want a media circus out of this. Just get the job done.
Yeah.
So, I to lie to people and tell them, like there was beaver going to be euthanized, but if they see it leave live, it doesn't hurt the feelings so bad.
Yeah, it's a funny world that way, isn't it? People will rant and rave at you for being a hunter while holding a Big Mac in their hand. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah.
And
Yep.
I'm not sure the meat content of the Big Mac either, but but you know what I mean, right? Like I've had this happen. You'll be at a function or whatever, and people find out that you're a trapper, and there's lots of questions in that. Overwhelmingly, people find it cool. People have an interest in it, and I think that's just because it's hardwired in the human, in our most primordial nature. Trapping, hunting, fishing, that kind of stuff is hardwired. And so people find it incredibly interesting, and overwhelmingly, I get really, really good questions, and people are very open to talk about it. But every now and then you get somebody that, oh, well, I think that's just so awful. And, their purse is sitting there next to them, and I'll say, well, you think that cow committed suicide for your purse?
So I don't know how it works in Alberta with local trappers associations, but here in Ontario, we have quite a few of them. So each they're kind of like a county, or 3 or 4 counties go together to have a local trappers association. And ours is the here in Perth. It's the oldest trappers association in Ontario. 1945 it was established.
Wow.
I've been president for, I'm not even sure how many years now. 10 anyways, I'm thinking.
The big bucks, huh?
A lot of education public wise with our fur kit. And it's amazing when you go to functions with the general public, they dive right in and touch the fur and they think it's so great. And we get very few real negative comments. Like you said, you get the odd person or 2 people that are rabid right against us. But the rest of them, they just want to talk about it and hear your stories. They're on the fence, and I think those are the people that you need to get to all the time.
I think a lot more people realize the realities of the world. Okay, and the reality is animals have to be controlled, whether it's a coyote or whether it's a raccoon or whether it's a muskrat, or whether the animals have to be controlled, or Mother Nature just builds up until they get sick, they starve to death, or they get ate by something else. I mean, that's the only way. When you take a look at any of the studies, every one of them will say that not enough wild animals die of old age for it to be significant in the study. They don't have a good way out. It's never nice. But Mother Nature builds up to these huge populations, and they crash all the way down and barely sustain. But it's all these up and down, right? And we just, it doesn't work with the reality of yes, we are living in what used to be their land and all that stuff, but that's not going to change. This matters. Somebody says to me, "But well, the beaver were here first." Yeah, okay, but you want to leave?
Where are you going?
Yeah,
where are you moving to? Mars? Like, I don't think we're not yet.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and they say, "Well, don't be ridiculous." I live in Edmonton. Yeah, well, Edmonton has huge population of beaver, and that doesn't make you without guilt in all of this. So I mean, if the fact that we're invading their habitat, we're all guilty of that. So we have to do something about it. It has to be balanced. And I think there's a whole lot of people that know that it has to be balanced. They just want to sit there and actually ask somebody who does it, and they want to feel good about knowing how it's being done. And I think that's the biggest strength that we have. You talked about the education kits and that you do. The biggest strength we have in Canada is the fact that, you know, we turned to the European Union and they said, we're not going to allow your fur anymore. And we're going to say, because it's inhumane. And we said, well, okay, define humane and we'll meet it. That was a stroke of genius. It was a big bald bluff, let me tell you, because who knew what they were going to say was the definition of humane. And you know, they I'm sure they laughed about it, thinking, oh, they'll never meet this standard, and we did. But because we did that, we are, as much as it gags me to use this word, we were progressive, and we realized, you know, where our place was in the world, and how we could ensure that place. So most people just want to know how it's done. Is it done, you know, ethically? You know, are there standards that are involved? You know, that kind of stuff. And we can at least stand up and hold our head up and say, yeah, we do it. You know, we're signatory to the agreement, and you know, that has humane right in the agreement of humane traffic standards. So I've always found that overwhelmingly, like, you know, you get that handful of people that you know, want to cause you trouble, whether it's on social media or wherever it is. And you know, it happens. And I just talk with my sponsors, you know, with the TV program especially, and I say, look, there's a handful, and they say, well, you know, they send threatening emails and all this. I said, well, for one thing, I can guarantee that, you know, just about none of these people are your customer to begin with. You know, they're not buying traps or guns or Argos or anything else. You know, they're just not. So I mean, that's a pretty hollow threat right there. We got highlighted here a few months back by a Facebook page. Now the name of it escapes me. They had 1.4 million members on this Facebook page, and they're anti-fur, and they were taking. I was, you know, every once a week you put a post up on Facebook or on YouTube or whatever about what that week's show was, and they would put it up, and they were exhorting all these 1.4 million people to attack us, you know, to flood us, to try and shut us down. I think I had removed, it might have been more than 24, but it was certainly less than 30 individual names. I would just block them, ban them, and ignore them. And then I joined their Facebook page. and I go there, and they would whine and complain that I wouldn't engage with them. You know, and you know, come on, people, we got to do more here. We got to do, he's just ignoring us. And it went nowhere. It went absolutely nowhere. There was probably 6-7 days of removing, you know, nasty posts. You know, 3-4 times a day I'd have to remove a couple of nasty posts, but you know, you'd get rid of that person, and then they would maybe come back, or another person from the same Facebook page would come back, but it was nothing. It was a tempest in a teapot. This is 1.4 million, you know, members on this Facebook page. Well, now anyone of your sponsors looks at that and goes, ooh, that's a lot of people, right? But it's not. It's not. I mean, it is really a straw man, and I happen to think that the climate people are just the same as the anti-fur people and all that. There's a lot of talk and not a lot of action. And you know, if they can't do it from their mom's basement and get the reaction they want, well, then the heck with you, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. The very funnest thing we do each year, and we haven't been able to do it for 2 years because of COVID, is we have what we call the Ag and Water Festival. And it's grade 4 or 5. And it's a huge number of schools. I think it's about 15 schools. Their classes over 2 days. You'll learn about everything in the rural community to do with agriculture and water. So our Trappers Association, we have a station there and a table, and we set up our fur kit, and we talk to the kids about trapping and fur bearers and the relationship to the water and how everything works. And we see 550 kids over 2 days. I'm pretty hoarse by the time I'm done talking to them all, but it's a great time. And you know what? Again, I get 1 or 2 kids out of those ones that are squeamish, and the rest of them they want to dive right into that table full of fur and just get a hold of it and say, oh, can we take some of this home?
Yeah.
You know, it's I see a future for sure that way. And I think the big thing is us educating people.
Hey folks, Rich from Trapping Inc. TV here, and it's no secret that I'm a big fan of coffee. Our friends at Old Smokes smoke roast their coffee beans over wood fires. You have no idea how good coffee can taste until it's smoked coffee. Did you know that studies have shown that just the smell of fresh coffee can boost brain activity? Yeah, it's that good. Sandy and I have teamed up with Old Smokes Coffee to make our own Trapping Inc. coffee blend. Let me introduce you to Wolverine, an ultra dark roast coffee bean smoked over maple wood fires. This is the pure, uncut trapper's fuel that keeps us laughing and trapping all day long. If you'd like to try our special blend, you can find it at www.trappinginc.com/shop. If dark roast isn't your thing, Old Smokes has 5 different coffee roasts from light to extra dark, each roasted over a different wood for a unique flavor. Right now, you can order from their online store and use our promo code RICH, that's RICH, and get 10% off your entire order. Just go to www.oldsmokescoffee.com. That's OLE smokescoffee.com and use the promo code RICH. That is promo code RICH for 10% off your entire order. And now let's get back to today's show.
Yeah. And I think part of it is once again that we do have a moral high ground we can stand on. You know, for one thing, what we do is ethical. For a second thing, it's very, very, very necessary, especially on the animal damage control side that you do. You know, what I do, you know, when I'm trapping my muskrat lakes and ponds around here, if we don't trap them, they end up with tularemia. And tularemia not only kills them, but it kills anything that drinks that water, which can be dogs and cats and cows and horses and even people get sick from tularemia, you know. And people look at me and say, well, it's not that dangerous. I says, well, have you ever heard of hantavirus? Oh yeah, that's dangerous. I said, that mice carry it around. Why wouldn't you think that something like a muskrat could carry something around? Well, yeah, but what about raccoons? They're so cute. Well, they're the number one vector in Saskatchewan. We don't have a lot of raccoon in Alberta. We have none up here where I live. But in Saskatchewan, raccoon is the number one vector for both distemper and rabies. So there you go. You know, like, I mean, both of those very, very dangerous diseases when it comes to livestock and domestic pets and all that kind of stuff, and even people. But those animals need to be controlled. They're the number one vector.
We've just been through a huge raccoon rabies outbreak here in Ontario. Started 4.5-5 years ago. It's finally under control again now. I've worked with our M&R rabies unit for the last 5 years, picking up samples and getting them tagged and getting them to them, and also I provided a lot of skunks to them for testing. That's another thing. Us, like, the average person doesn't know the trappers are the people on the ground providing all the samples for these government agencies to continue doing their work.
Yeah. Like, I think it was Jim Gibbs' boy said to me, he said that trappers are the last line of defense between the wild and civilization. And they're the ones that see everything happening first. You know, they see the trends and they know what's going on. And sometimes, you know, if you have the right biologists in government and that kind of stuff, it's a good thing. Sometimes you have ones who have totally no respect for the trappers whatsoever. They figure that the education they got, you know, last year at the U of A it tells them much more about what's going on than somebody who's lived there for 20 years. You know what I mean? We do have those issues here, especially in Alberta, where there is so much development going on, and especially with resource-based development and that kind of stuff. Our biologists, you know, for the most part, don't have a lot of respect for trappers or trapping, and it's one of the issues that we fight all the time. I look at others and people talk, you know, they have good relationship stories about their conservation officers, the biologists, and all that kind of stuff, and I'm envious. I'm envious.
Yeah, I will say we have at least here, in my opinion, I have a couple of really good COs, and trapping causes very few problems here. It's not like it was during the fur boom of the 80s when, you know, it was a full-time job, police and trappers.
Yeah.
Or people who own traps is what I should say, because of the money aspect of things.
Right.
Most of the guys got in it back then, you know, they're long gone. They'll never be in it again. It was just it was a fast buck thing, and it created a lot of unnecessary regulations for us in Ontario that we're still undoing to this day from the fur boom.
Yeah. Well, and I want to clarify, I've never had a problem with a conservation officer, and my conservation officers that I work with are great. We usually host one of them every year out on the trapline for a day out in the trapline. I think they probably come more for Sandy's cooking than they do to get beat down the trail by Rich, but no, they are awesome. And I've had them. There's been a couple times when there's been a paper snafu. Like one of the forms that we fill out or pre-COVID that we filled out was in triplicate. And so I get to keep one copy and 2 copies are supposed, or the dispensary or the person that you're registering the fur with keeps one copy and one copy goes to government. Well, they lost all of my copies one year. So then what's their biologist's immediate reaction? We're going to take your trap line away.
Wow.
I said, hey, listen, how do I know? You know, it's not my incompetence that has lost these. You know, I mean, I have copies. Well, you could, you know, they wanted me to send the copy of registered mail. I said, how about I scan them to the cloud and send you a link? Well, I'm not sure that's good enough. I said, well, it's going to have to be good enough because you already lost 1 cent.
Yeah, I'm not going to give up mine.
No,
exactly.
Exactly. He wrote a nasty letter, and I ended up taking it to the minister. Like, I mean, it was just, and he said there was no, you know, the minister said there was no call for that, you know, and I said, yeah, but you know, then this person expects to have cooperation, right? You know,
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But this is the first, I didn't even know the guy's name, and this is my first interaction with him. He's threatening me with taking away my trap line.
Wow.
You know. You must have a good trapping story.
Oh, I've got more than a few, Rich, over the years of silly things we did in the pursuit of fur.
Sounds good.
I think one of the most dangerous and worst ones was the time we flipped the canoe in early March, chasing muskrats in the first flood. We had went down the river the day before, me and a friend of mine, and there was a fence strung across the river.
Ooh.
There was a cable held the fence, about a 1/2-inch aircraft cable. So you couldn't touch that cable with a paddle reaching up to it the first day. Second day, we had a lot of rain that night and a lot of snow melt. So we went down, put in again, and we were down the next day, and we were coming up to the cable, and we were coming pretty quick, and you could see it was just below the water line. That's how much the water had come up.
Oh.
Well, that, and we were sideways immediately and into the drink. And I have never been in such cold water in my life as that. It just sucks the air right out of you. And then it was 1.5 miles or 2 miles to the truck from there. And it was the coldest walk I think I've ever been on, soaking wet walking to that truck. We found the canoe a week later lodged in a log jam about 5 or 6 miles from where we dumped it. I got my 22 back in the summertime. It was right below the cable.
Really?
Yep. It was junk at that point. It was, the barrel was rusted shut. But I did find it. I got it back. Yeah.
All those lessons, huh?
Yeah. I've crawled into hollow trees before after coons when we were younger that I'm thinking, like, if I ever get stuck in here, feet up in the air and face down trying to reach those coons, I don't know if anybody will ever find me.
I've only ever went trapping coon once, and that was last March. I went over to Saskatchewan, went with Ryan, and we had some fun there. I found him to be a pretty cool animal. I guess I'm at a loss as to why their fur isn't more popular.
So I've trapped a lot of beautiful coons over the years, and I can't believe too that it's not a more popular fur.
You know, it's not really long fur. It stands up all by itself. Like, it's practically non-directional.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Whereas you take any of the long hair and that, it's very directional. So it has
Directional
some
one
care
way.
involved, but with raccoon, you give it a shake and it's all standing up
Yeah.
and it doesn't seem to be that super heavy. You know, you'd think it would be a very popular material to work with, but I guess it's
At one time we produced a lot of coon in this area. Like I've had plenty of years at 300 and 500 coon in this area, and I know guys that have broke 1,000 in this area too.
yeah.
Lots of, when I was in my teens and early 20s, everybody I knew had a coon hound. Like everybody took 150, 200 coon a year, and we had oodles and oodles of coon.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're an animal that you can harvest extremely heavily, and you'll have just as many the next year to harvest.
A buddy of mine in Minnesota, Big Joe, he had a coon mule. And I said, "What?" He says, "It was a mule that was designed for coon hunting." I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "Well, you got this flour sack," and he says, "And this is the mule's flour sack." And he says, "You drape it over a fence, it'll jump over the fence." He says, "I drape it over the tailgate of my truck, it jumped into the tailgate in my truck." I said, "What?" You know, like I'm sure I'm getting my leg pulled at this time. He says, "No." He says, "We'd be going down the road." He says, "And that old mule would be back there standing in the back of my truck and be leaning to the corners." I said, "You didn't have stock here?" No. I says, he says, "The mule didn't need that." But they would chase coon all night long, and with dogs and this mule. And you know, he says you know, the dogs would be barking and get over there with the mule, shine a light, there'd be a coon, they'd shoot it, they bring it back. And he lived in Minneapolis, and he sold it to a barbecue place. He'd sell a raccoon to a barbecue place in St. Paul. And the fella there would always make them leave one paw on. He says, because he says, "I don't mind eating cat," but he says, "not at coon prices."
We used to have a fur buyer from about 2 hours south of me, getting down closer to the border, that bought raw coon hides. And I sold him quite a few just skinned coons over the years. But he had a really good market too. He had guys that came from Detroit, and they would fill the trunk of the car and then back across. And at that point, you know, nobody cared. Nobody said a word about that stuff going on. And then all of a sudden, one time they got to the border, and the U.S. Customs said, like, "What are you guys doing? Can't do that." That was the end of the coon market in Detroit from Ontario.
Isn't that silly though? Like, I mean, what was it hurting?
Nothing. You know, exactly nothing.
I've told this story
Made a bit of
before,
money
but one of the lure makers here makes a wolf gland lure. Okay. And it's made actually from glands of wolves. And so he buys, you know, wolf gland and that from everybody and to make this lure. And works pretty good. Anyway, one of his big clients was, you know, Montana and Wyoming and those places with Idaho, their DNR there, or whatever they call them, fish and game and fish, you know, would buy this for getting rid of problem wolves, right? Well, and one day some pencil pusher somewhere looks at it, and it says right on the jar, it says wolf gland lure. Do you suppose it have parts of wolves in there? You know? So yeah, you know, I mean, you have a 10-gallon pail that you throw two glands into and mix it up. That's how much wolf gland there was in there, right? Well, then it became illegal, and they were going to charge him and all this kind of stuff. And then, you know, one of the guys in the department says, "You realize that we're probably his biggest customer." And then it all went away, but he can't sell it there anymore. You know, he didn't end up getting charged over it, but he can't sell down there anymore because it has parts of wolves in it, right?
Yeah. silly rules.
Oh, I know. I mean, we have to have some control, but man, it's almost like, you know, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, because it gets out of control so quickly, right?
Yep.
So tell us about your company. How do people get a hold of you? What area are you in?
So I like I said, I live in a small town called Atwood, and I service an area of about an hour and a half around me here in Midwestern Ontario. I have a website, www.duncanwildlifecontrol.ca, and I'm on Facebook at Duncan Wildlife Control as well. And I have a YouTube channel at Matt Duncan, Canadian Longliner.
There you go. Right on.
My YouTube channel, I did my first videos in 2009. And then it kind of languished because of family obligations and raising kids. And I never did as many. And I'm trying to put some content to get it back up and rolling again.
I'm having a big difficulty with all of them now. I guess somehow I landed on the radar. They demonetize anything that has one of my grandchildren in it, because taking children trapping is the same as pedophilia is, according to them. That's child abuse. So wow. I'm at war with them over that. And Amazon Prime just suspended my my account. We've used to stream thousands upon thousands of minutes of Trapping Inc. TV on Amazon Prime, and now they've suspended it. And
did they give you a reason?
None.
Really?
None. Just that the account was suspended. Wow. And that there is no appeal. How do you like that?
Yeah. Wow.
So that's why we're moving away from the standard social programs, platforms, Facebook and YouTube and all that stuff, and more to our own our locals.com private community, just because nobody bothers you there, and you don't have to be justifying yourself over all this stupidity, right? Yep, exactly. Whenever I've had been flagged on anything for, like if I'd have not fought on YouTube, they'd have shut my channel down a long time ago. Like, 3 strikes and you're gone, right? And I still am at 0 strikes, but I have been had a strike laid against me several times. And, I've had to fight each and every time to make sure that it doesn't stick. And coming down to education, and it's a fact of life, and this is our history. But I don't know how much longer that's going to pass. I don't know how much longer the fact that this is a historic and timeless tradition, and it's what opened up the North America and settled it and all that. I don't know how much longer that's going to be allowable. For one thing, right now, it takes forever to get past the artificial intelligence, because your first strikes are laid against you by artificial intelligence. Then it takes several appeals to get to you actually talk to somebody. And once I can talk to somebody, it becomes easier. But I don't know. I don't see a future in YouTube. I don't. There'll probably always be a future for the crap that's on there, but not for things like hunting and fishing and trapping.
Not for our stuff. Yeah.
Nope.
It's unfortunate for sure, because it's a big platform.
It's a huge platform, but I guess what we're learning is that it's not the only platform, and we need to look elsewhere, Yeah. But we have been at it for over an hour, sir.
Oh, that's great. It was wonderful chatting with you.
Yeah, it's great. I see your name all the time out in the internet world, and it's good to put a face to the name, and it's been a wonderful chat. I hope you have a good rest of your fall here. What time do you shut her down and go to the big bush?
So I'm going to start our muskrat season. Muskrat, mink, and beaver all open on Monday down here in the south.
Yeah.
I'm going to start down here. I'm going to start doing some trapping here. I've been doing nuisance beaver work for the past 2 weeks for a big marsh complex and a couple of municipalities, but it's time to go after some muskrats here before I go north. And then I'm hoping to get up maybe the middle of November, maybe to go up and get a bunch of my beaver quota caught and trap some marten and fisher and lynx, and be in the north away from people for a few days.
Yeah, that's good stuff. That is.
Yep, for sure.
Well, I sure appreciate you taking the time to talk with us tonight.
Sure. I'd love to come back again sometime. You bet.
We'll make sure we do it. And to the rest of you folks, it's been good. I hope you've enjoyed it. We've had a lot of fun, a lot of laughs, and maybe we'll see you down the line.